1. In the summer, in McKinley, Minnesota, when you are 12, there is so much to do that almost none of it gets done, except fishing. It isn't that McKinley is big or busy. It's only got 1,200 people. Not much more than when my great-grandfather, Marshall Knutson, homesteaded the town site. I was named after him, and everybody calls me Marsh, except Willy, who is my best friend, and always just says hey when he wants me. He also says there are only 900 people in town, but K.O. Morgan, who owns the grocery, says there are more to attract tourists. I have never figured out why having more people would bring tourists in, but I don't own a grocery either, so there it is. But it's not a big town. And there's no real business either, except some logging in the winter when the swamps are frozen enough to skid the big logs out of the woods. Also, there are a few farms, but they're small because of the dampness in the soil, which turns to mud in the spring during planting. The mud sticks the tractors so bad, they have to use work teams of horses to pull them out, and what with running back and forth with horses to pull tractors out, you really couldn't call it farming. So, you couldn't call McKinley a busy town either. But in the summer, for some reason, all the get-done things seem to come at you. The yard needs raking down and mowing with the push mower. Dad doesn't like the rotary power mowers because they rip rather than cut. The garden needs weeding, all the time. The backyard fence needs mending and tightening because Willie Taylor's pony can't stand to stay out of new corn and leans on the wire. Trash needs to be burned and the front fence needs painting, or the rot takes the wood and the flower beds need cleaning from the cats and the storm windows have to come down and the screens go up or the mosquitoes carry you off and. It doesn't have to be a big town or a busy town to keep you jumping in the summer. And then, right in the middle, to make it worse, Willie Taylor comes by, and he's got his rod over his shoulder and some night crawlers and angleworms in an old cottage cheese carton, and that pretty much takes care of finishing whatever chore you're doing. Willie has a way of talking so you think just ahead of what he's saying. He'll stop by the yard when I'm mowing the grass, and he'll stare down the street with his shoulders kind of over and down the way he has of standing, holding the rod in one hand and the worms in the other. Then he'll smile and say, "Grass won't grow much between now and dark." And what he really means is that the fish are biting, and while you can always mow a lawn, the fish aren't always biting. Out south of town, there is an old iron and concrete bridge across the Poplar River. In the spring, it runs with suckers, which aren't much good for anything but fertilizer and pet food, although some folks smoke them and swear by them. But in the middle of the summer, the water in the poplar settles down to tame, and the suckers head back into the lakes and the mud, and the fishing on the bridge gets good if you're serious. Willie and I live there in the summer, or so it seems. Every afternoon, we try to get down there, or almost every afternoon. Using a small hook and a piece of worm, you slide the hook down gently alongside the concrete pilings, right along the edge of the cement. That's where the big rock bass wait, and if you use a light line and light leader, it can be fun catching them. They're scrappy, but it's even more fun eating them when they're battered in egg and cornmeal and fried just past moist in a hot pan, the way my mother cooks them. Sometimes we sit in the summer sun down there all day. There's hardly any traffic on the bridge because it leads out to farms, and farmers don't come into town that much. It can be pretty private, and when Willie gets to talking, it's fun to feel the sun and just listen with one finger on the line, waiting for that raspy feeling that means a rock bass is mouthing the bait, sucking it in and out the way they do before they take it. It was on a summer day like that with us down at the bridge fishing that the story of Carl started, even though Carl is all winter and ice, or part of the story anyway. It was hot, and they weren't biting, but it didn't matter. The sun was keeping the mosquitoes down, and we had our shirts off, getting tanned, and Willie snorted. You know, McKinley isn't like other towns. Considering that Willie was like me, and neither one of us had ever lived anywhere except McKinley, it hit me that Willie couldn't know what other towns were like, but I kept my mouth shut. If you got set to argue with